Well, hello and welcome to the Smells Like Money podcast. Join me, Suzanne Chin Taylor, the DooDoo Diva, as I interview guests who are making an impact on how we manage and operate systems for conveying and treating wastewater. As a veteran of the wastewater, trenchless, and civil infrastructure industry, each week I'll be bringing you industry know-how from industry pros who know how. Join me each week as I speak with representatives of organizations that are utilizing disruptive or new technologies and methods, and executives who are excited to share how to be successful and sustainable in our vital industry. So whether you want to learn about the latest trends in technology, in treatment or trenchless, gain tips on training and retaining great talent, or simply how to be more efficient, productive, or profitable, this podcast is for you. Ready? Let's dive right in. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the DooDoo Diva Smells Like Money podcast. I have the amazing pleasure of bringing you today Eric DuPre, the founder and president of Texas Infra Group. They are specialists in helping clients deal with SSOs and I issues, primarily in the state of Texas. But since this is a topic that really is all across the nation and really globally, Eric has a lot of information to share. He is definitely a man that he has a lot of knowledge and a lot of great things to share with the industry. And as we began discussing having him come on the podcast, it became very clear to me right away, there was no way that we could cover everything that I wanted to cover with this gentleman in one episode. So we are going to be bringing you a series of 3 podcast episodes on topics all related to SSOs and I and how to mitigate them. We're going to be talking about the state of infrastructure, smart city initiatives, and I promise you, this is going to be a series of fascinating topics, so stay tuned. This very first one is we are going to be focusing on condition assessment. And there's lots of funds out there available, under this new infrastructure bill, Eric's nodding his head. But how can you get your share of the funds? And how do you even know what you're supposed to be asking for if you don't really know the true condition of your infrastructure? And so without further ado, welcome, Eric, to the show. And thank you for being so generous with your time and also sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, Suzanne, I really appreciate this. I've followed you for quite a while on LinkedIn and messaged you a couple of times. And now we finally got the opportunity to share our knowledge and our experience and, basically just educate all the people that work within our industry. This is a very unique opportunity for us to get together and collaborate this type of information. And I'm thankful to be able to come onto your podcast.
Well, and again, thank you for your service to the industry. So when we were, beginning to talk about this series, you brought up a topic of the ASCE. And for those, and the scorecard of that, for those of members of our industry who may not be familiar with that term, can you share a little bit about the background of that and how that all ties in with infrastructure scoring?
Yeah, so ASCE is the oldest and the largest engineering association in the United States. It basically is comprised of multiple state ASCE groups, and collectively they make up one large group for the whole United States. So it's the American Society of Civil Engineers. So that's what the acronyms for ASCE stand for. And so what engineers have done in their respective states is they've analyzed each industry in each state as to what the overall condition is of each one of those states and each of those industries. They've broken down through a report card grade and given them a scorecard of what they believe the infrastructure to be in that kind of state. So the grading system is simple. It's just like a report card grade that you and your kids would get whenever you go to school. So it's an A, B, C, a D, and then an F. And so numerically, that's a 1 through 5 scoring system, but when you put it with a letter grade, it's A through F. And very shockingly, the most critical infrastructures that we have, I mean, water and wastewater, the letter grades on there are very, very low. I mean, we're talking about D's and D minuses.
Well, when you were saying about the grade, there was a key word that I heard of what they believe the condition of the infrastructure is. And that was something we discussed about they're making some assumptions, and that how important it is for municipalities to get their data into the hands of this organization to let them know so they can correlate it accurately. Am I understanding that right?
No, you hit the nail right on the head. I was doing a presentation with Dr. Mohammed Najafi. He is a professor here in the state of Texas at the University of Texas, Arlington, and he's one of the presidents of ASCE and the Texas group. And me and him had a long discussion about some of the questions that we were getting asked when we were at the Underground Construction Technology Conference. And one of the students and engineers in the audience, she asked, she goes, where did they get all this information to do the report card grades? And before I could answer, he answered, and he said, he goes, we don't have a centralized database for all that information. So he's like, it's merely a guesstimation.
So if cities are using something like the NASCO standard, you know, the PACP standard, or in other places around the world, they might be using, what is it, the WRC. How can they work with organizations like this to correlate that data? Because obviously, you know, PACP is on a similar, you know, grading system as far as severity of a crack or root intrusion and all those things. And so how can we use other platforms that we've already got in place where people are being proactive to make sure that all of that is aligning? Because from what I was understanding from you is that that grade weighs in heavily to the funds that are going to be available to cities.
Absolutely.
So if the two don't match up, cities could really be hurting themselves and not getting their fair share of the pie. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, anytime you have asset information, you want it to be as accurate as possible. You want it to be accurate. And so each owner of a system, they have to score every single asset that they have in their system. And so once you give it a rating and a ranking, so if that asset is a 1 or a 2, which would be like an A or a B, it's a normal functioning range, doesn't really need much. But then when you get to like a C, a D, and an F, you get into the 3 most important things, because that's where we start associating money. You've got either a repair or a rehab, or you have a full replacement when you hit the C, the D, and the F. And then when you hit those particular letter grades or those rankings, you can scorecard the whole system cumulatively to where you know for that specific system, is the whole system ranked an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F. And currently not cities, but states, they don't have a centralized database, nor do they have a policy in place to really say that you need to be reporting what the overall condition is of your entire infrastructure for sewer, water, electricity, whatever segment of utility that they have. Each state does not have a centralized database for each of its owners. But if the owners don't even have the information in their own centralized database, then there's nowhere to report any of this information. And at the end of the day, if you don't have a proper evaluation of all your assets, then to rank it, to score it, and to say, okay, we need X amount of dollars because it's going to require a repair, a rehab, or replacement, and then that has the economics tied with it to where you can now say, I have 1,000 assets and the cumulative score is a C minus, and that's going to extrapolate to so many dollars. So if you don't break it down like that, how do you know how much money you need to go fix that particular parts of the system? You don't.
Do you need to do something special in order to compile that data and get it to the, since they don't require it, you have to voluntarily do it. So I guess we're asking for a call to arms, so to speak, of, even though they're not demanding it, make it a policy to just voluntarily submit it.
Yeah, I mean, if each state, well, let me back up.
Okay.
So for about 4 or 5 years, I served as a Harris County Mud Board Director of a municipal utility district. So I was on the board of directors, and we had to come up with a budget. Mm-hmm. So in order to come up with a budget of how much money we needed to keep our system in good working order, to be in compliance with environmental responsibilities, financial responsibilities, and keep it in a working order, we had to set the standard among our board of what standard we wanted. Did we want an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F system? Now, once we committed to saying, hey, we want somewhere between a B minus and a C minus, we're okay with that. Well, the gap of where we currently are today, let's just say it's a D minus, and we want to get to a C minus. That's called the gap. And so the gap is to get from point A to point B. Right. And the only way to appropriate a proper budget is to know how many assets you have. Number one, how many assets do you have? And then what condition they are, so that you can associate the financials based on the condition of repair, rehab, replacement, or nothing. So for any system owner, you have to ascertain this condition assessment information in order to formulate a budget. So to ask for the state to ask owners to provide this information, this is information that you already have to have in order to properly manage and budget a sewer system, bottom line. So it's information that they're being good stewards and projecting proper budgets, that those budgets meet the actual reality of their system. They have to be tied together, and the only way to do that is to get a thorough condition assessment done by some national standards and codes. And the cool thing is, I believe NASCO, when they look at an asset, they'll rank or rate it a 1 through a 5, which is awesome because 1 through 5 matches up with A, B, C, D, and F, just like ASCE. So if you combine the two ratings and the scorings, it automatically spits out something simple, because everybody knows, like, when your kid comes home from school and they give you a report card grade, you already have some set standards. Like, I wanted my kids to be in the A and the B range, more so in the A than anything. But if they came home with a C, a D, or an F, we had a serious talk about our plan of what we were going to do to enhance that grade to get it up to the level that we expected. So, it's complex, but it's also very simple at the end of the day of what you have to do in order to formulate a budget.
Well, you had mentioned something about with the ASCE, with the report card, that's public information. And so residents of a city or a community could find out what the grade is, and then that could make things a little bit uncomfortable for the powers that be. So I guess making sure that we correlate, because you don't want to assume, what if you're actually doing better than what the ASCE, chances are you're not, but what if you are doing better than what they are assuming you are? Or what if you think you're really healthy, but you're really not?
Yeah, that again, you're spot on with you're spot on with what you're thinking, is because the thing is, in life in general, it's just bad to do assumptions on anything. And until you do some proper investigation, evaluation, we're no longer guessing, and we actually know, and we're accurate. we have to be extremely accurate at this point in time is very critical because the amount of money that is available is limited. And so the level of accuracy that people need, we need to know exactly. So if the money shows up on your doorstep, but you already have all this information and it helps you map out your plan, you know exactly where and how and priority and sequencing of once you ascertain this money, where you're going to get the best bang for the buck. You know, that's a layman's term that, you know, every city manager in the United States, that's the magic thing that they're looking for, is that we need to utilize these funds to the utmost, because some of these systems are out of control, and they definitely need the best bang for the buck. So every time they spend $1 here, does it make the most impact on the system, and what kinds of things impact the system that actually cost you a lot of money? And so there's a lot of variables and factors that going into the condition. The condition of the asset is important. But then when we're talking about SSOs and I&I with sewer, how bad it leaks is almost equally as important as the actual condition. In some cases, the I&I is more important than the condition, because if the structure is still standing and it hasn't collapsed and it has structural integrity, but it's leaking like a sieve and it's costing you thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in leaks annually, that's something that you need to take into consideration, not just the condition, but the condition easily tells you a snapshot of your overall condition of your structure, of your existing infrastructure. And it's ultra critical to have that information. Now, once that individual in that city, in that state ascertains that information and they get a scorecard, they can merely report this, just a scorecard, in a centralized database that says system owner in this particular location state has a scorecard of their sewer infrastructure off of NASCO standards and ASCE standards, and it's got a report card grade of A, B, C, D, or F. With that information being reported to the state can now look at a big picture of what the overall state condition of the infrastructure is on water, sewer, electricity, whatever industry they wanted to have a scorecard, so that we have a state level planning and funding to have a snapshot of what's going on in that state. That same information could easily be slid over to actually substantiate the ASCE claims to those report card grades. They'd actually have quantitative data to support their assumptions.
Wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah, it's a long series of just simple connected dots. It really is. And there's a couple right now. There's just a couple of dots missing.
Yes. Yeah. But they're easily remedied if we just think about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We just think about it and take the time to do it. And so when you were saying about the condition and the I&I, that leads us into, it's a perfect segue into our next episode, where we are going to be dealing with I&I issues, EPA, the costs of I&I, and some, maybe we're aware of it, but we don't think about it too much. Some of the little culprits that are actually big culprits, little things that are big culprits to contributing to some very costly I&I, and how you can resolve it.
Absolutely.
Yes. So stay tuned for our next episode. Eric, you hang in there with me. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode, and we'll see you next time. And until then, keep it flowing. Thanks so much for joining me, the DooDoo Diva, on this week's episode of Smells Like Money. What stood out to you this week? Share your takeaways by leaving me a review. You can find out more about the new technologies, creating sustainable solutions, and insights on how to succeed in our vital industry by subscribing to the show. Whether you want to learn about the latest trends in wastewater infrastructure, treatment, or trenchless, you've got it all right here at Smells Like Money. If you're an industry expert and would like to be considered as a guest for the show, book a quick chat with me by visiting calendly.com/the2itgroup/B-A-podcast-guest, or simply click the link in the show notes below. Until next week, a big shout out to all my industry friends and those who will be. You are my superheroes. Thanks for tuning in, keeping it flowing, and we'll see you all next week.